Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts.
Yeah, and we have a really fascinating deep dive for you today.
We really do. Because, when you step onto a modern cruise ship today, you are basically surrounded by the future.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking vessels sporting carbon fiber masts, hybrid electric propulsion systems, and gigabit Wi-Fi just beaming down from satellites.
Right, keeping thousands of people seamlessly connected in the middle of the ocean.
Exactly. The sheer engineering required to maintain that level of luxury, floating in international waters, it's practically miraculous.
It is.
But beneath that cutting-edge surface, the operational foundation of the whole industry is, well, it's colliding with some very harsh, century-old realities.
Yeah, the contrast is pretty staggering.
So today, we're exploring the extreme ends of this ecosystem. Think of it like a theater, right?
Right.
We're going to look at the dazzling performance on stage, but also take a hard look at what's happening in the wings and down in the engine room.
I like that analogy, because the cruise industry is a perfect microcosm of globalization.
How so?
Well, you have ships built in one hemisphere, registered in another, crewed by an entirely different subset of nations,
Right.
and then operating in the territorial waters of yet another country. So the friction points between international law, ultra-luxury consumerism, and local impacts, they're just unavoidable.
And that friction is exactly what's happening right now down in Australia.
Yeah, it's a massive story.
There is a major push led by Australia's anti-slavery commissioner, Chris Evans, to basically enforce domestic Australian employment conditions on foreign-flagged cruise ships.
Which is a huge deal.
It is, because these are ships sailing from Sydney to Brisbane, filled with Australian tourists visiting Australian cities. Yet they're operating under this legal loophole called the Section 11 exemption.
Right, and that exemption is really the structural core of this entire debate. It was introduced back in 1998.
Okay, so why was it created in the first place?
Well, the Australian government wanted to stimulate local tourism, right? They wanted to make it easier for international cruise lines to operate along their coast. So Section 11 allows qualifying ships to sail between Australian ports without needing a formal coastal trading license.
So how does a massive ship even qualify to just, bypass that licensing?
It comes down to specific thresholds from that 98 policy. If a passenger ship is over 5,000 gross tons, carries at least 100 passengers, and can hit 15 knots or more, it gets the exemption.
Wow.
And by bypassing the coastal trading license, the ships operate completely outside the purview of Australia's Fair Work Act.
I genuinely need to understand the logic here. Because if a floating hotel is physically sitting in an Australian port,
Right.
employing people to serve Australian tourists, how does simply running a foreign flag up the mast legally insulate it from local labor laws?
I mean, it stems from the concept of maritime sovereignty. It's evolved over centuries. Basically, under international law, a ship is subject to the laws of its flag state, the country where it's registered.
Right, the whole flags of convenience thing.
Exactly. Countries often register ships in nations with, let's say, favorable tax structures and very flexible labor regulations. Section 11 just acknowledges that reality. It essentially says, for the sake of tourism, we won't force these massive vessels to restructure their entire employment contracts just for a coastal route.
But Commissioner Evans is arguing that this 1998 measure is artificially suppressing labor costs at a massive human expense.
And the numbers coming out are really tough to hear.
They're staggering. The focus right now is on 3 vessels operating full-time in Australia: the Carnival Adventure, the Carnival Encounter, and the Carnival Splendor.
Right.
We're looking at a 2025 employment contract showing pay of roughly 33 Australian dollars a day, which is about $23.26 in US dollars.
Wow.
And the crews are allegedly working 12-hour shifts 7 days a week on 9-month contracts. That breaks down to about $82.75 an hour.
Yeah, and the Maritime Union of Australia has received hundreds of formal complaints over the past year about these exact conditions.
Hundreds.
Yeah. And the union notes that most of these crew members are independent contractors recruited from Africa and Southeast Asia, which just further complicates any sort of collective bargaining.
And the personal accounts are deeply concerning.
Yeah.
There's this one from Queen Onawoha. She's a Nigerian beauty specialist who worked aboard the Carnival Adventure and the Encounter.
Right, I read her account.
She reported her shifts were dragging on for 14 hours. She said she was relying on caffeine tablets literally just to maintain consciousness on the job.
That's awful.
And on top of that, she claimed she was spending 50 Australian dollars a week of her own money on food.
Which brings up another huge allegation from the complainants. Current and former workers stated they actually distrusted the meals provided to the crew.
Wait, really? Why?
They allege that surplus food from the passenger buffets was repeatedly refrigerated, reheated, and then served to the staff. Some even reported buying their own bottled water because they didn't trust the ship's onboard supply.
Okay, but why would a crew member on a modern multi-million-dollar vessel be afraid to drink the water? Isn't there some sort of global baseline for human rights at sea? Like a minimum standard for food and care?
There is, actually. It's called the Maritime Labor Convention, or the MLC. It's essentially a seafarer's Bill of Rights. It's an international treaty that mandates safe food, free drinking water, prompt pay, strict rest hours, and adequate medical care.
Then how are these allegations, like a housekeeper being denied medical leave and ordered back to work while sick, or 4 people packed into a single shared cabin? How does that square with this treaty?
Well, this is where we have to look objectively at Carnival's response, because they push back on these allegations completely.
Okay, what's their defense?
Carnival operates over 90 ships globally, right? They have roughly 100,000 crew members at any given time, and they state they maintain absolute compliance with the MLC. As for the water, they point out it's routinely monitored, treated, and tested by third-party labs to ensure it's safe.
But who is actually verifying that? If the ship flies a foreign flag, does Australia even have the authority to board it and test those claims?
They do, through a mechanism called port state control. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority, or AMSA, serves as the regulator there. They can board any foreign flagged vessel in port, conduct unannounced inspections, and even detain the ship or issue massive fines if they find MLC breaches.
And have they inspected these Carnival ships?
Yes, AMSA recently conducted unannounced inspections on all 3 of these locally based Carnival ships, and in every recent inspection, AMSA cleared the company of any breaches.
Really? So they found no violations?
None. An earlier separate investigation into the Carnival encounter also found no breaches. So Carnival is stating very clearly that they have nothing to hide, and right now the regulatory inspections support their position.
That creates such a complex standoff, because the Maritime Union is submitting formal complaints to AMSA over collective bargaining. And SafeWork NSW was reportedly denied access to a ship because Carnival argues domestic agencies have no authority over international seafarers.
Right, it's a jurisdictional maze. You even had Labor Senator Tony Sheldon visiting a ship and publicly stating that his discussions aligned with the crew's claims of low pay.
Yet the federal government's broader stance seems to just reflect the economic realities. A spokesperson for Transport Minister Catherine King noted that while the allegations are, quote, horrifying, the Section 11 exemption keeps costs down and heavily supports domestic tourism.
Exactly. When you see a deeply discounted cruise ticket, you are looking at the direct result of these complex international labor loopholes that keep operational costs incredibly low.
Which is a perfect segue, because the mass market cruise industry relies on sourcing global labor to bypass local wage laws, right? That efficiency is what allows for a cheap week-long vacation.
Absolutely.
But what is truly wild is where those massive industry profits are being reinvested. They are funding a rapid expansion into the absolute ceiling of the ultra-luxury market.
The bifurcation of the industry is just stark. On one end, you have crews allegedly working 12-hour shifts for $33 a day. On the other end, operators like Atlas Ocean Voyages are just pushing the boundaries of wealth.
Atlas is a perfect example. They just announced a massive expansion into Asia and Africa for late 2028, targeting a completely different demographic.
Yeah, the crown jewel of this is their new ship, the Atlas Adventurer. It's a 400-guest luxury expedition sailing yacht. It's planned to be built in China, measuring 210 meters long.
And the engineering specs are just fascinating. It features an Ice-Class 1B hull, 3 carbon fiber masts, and hybrid dual-fuel propulsion.
Right. Integrating carbon fiber masts on a ship that massive, it blends traditional sailing aesthetics with modern materials. It drastically reduces weight above the waterline, which improves stability.
What does an Ice-Class 1B hull actually do, though? I assume it's not just a fancy marketing term.
Oh, no. It's a highly specific structural classification. It means the steel plating is significantly thicker, and the internal framing ribs are spaced much closer together.
So it's basically armored.
Essentially, yeah. It allows the yacht to safely navigate through light, uncompressed first-year ice without needing an icebreaker escort. It's engineered to push deep into polar regions that standard cruise ships simply can't survive.
Wow. And the hybrid dual-fuel propulsion, how does that work for 400 guests?
So traditional cruise ships rely heavily on marine diesel. A hybrid system pairs those combustion engines with massive electric battery banks. So when they enter a pristine marine reserve, they can shut down the diesel engines and glide through almost silently on electric power, with zero localized emissions.
The hardware is incredible. But the itineraries they're planning for the Atlas adventure are just on another level.
Oh, they really are.
They announced 4 extraordinary expeditions for the inaugural season. The centerpiece is the Grand Odyssey Expedition.
Yeah.
It departs Kobe, Japan on November 30, 2028, and ends in Cape Town, South Africa.
Yep.
The voyage is 128 nights long.
I mean, spending over 4 months on a single voyage, that fundamentally changes the nature of the trip. It's not a vacation anymore, it's a temporary lifestyle.
Okay, 128 nights. That is changing your residency. Who is the target audience that can just vanish at sea for a third of a year? The sheer cost and time commitment filter out like 99% of the population.
You'd be surprised. Atlas's CEO, James A. Rodriguez, noted that nearly 30% of their travelers return for another sailing. There is a growing demographic seeking these deeper, more meaningful, immersive experiences.
And they get some crazy perks, right?
Oh, yeah. Up to $4,500 in air credits per guest, pre-expedition hotel stays, private transfers, unlimited Wi-Fi. They even have an early booking campaign for 2026 and 2027, offering up to $6,779 off per person.
If the discount alone is nearly $7,000, the baseline price tag must be absolutely astronomical.
It is. They view the ship not just as transport, but as a hyper-curated mobile residence.
It's just wild to imagine the contrast. In the exact same industry, you have massive ships managing severe labor disputes over minimum wage, and then these cutting-edge yachts designed for guests spending 4 months in total luxury.
Showcases the vast extremes of the modern maritime economy, for sure.
But there is a point of friction here, too, because whether you build a 210-meter luxury yacht or a floating mass-market resort, eventually those vessels have to park somewhere.
Exactly. And the physical footprint of the industry is immense. When a ship docks, it completely integrates with the local infrastructure.
Which brings us to the archipelago of Madeira. They've just been shortlisted for 2 2026 World Cruise Awards. Europe's best cruise destination, and the Port of Funchal is up for World's Best Cruise Terminal for Sustainability.
Which is incredibly impressive. The Madeira Ports Administration, APRAM, noted this is their 5th consecutive year being recognized internationally. They've already won Europe's Best Cruise Destination in 2022, 2023, and 2025.
The volume of human traffic they manage is just astonishing. Like, they are the valedictorian of cruise ports.
They really are. In 2025 alone, Madeira handled over 1 million passenger and crew visits.
Right. The breakdown was 746,257 passengers and 278,185 crew members. And the growth is accelerating. In just the first quarter of 2026, Funchal processed over 335,000 passengers.
Processing over 1 million people on an island without collapsing the local ecosystem requires highly tuned engineering.
So how do they do it? The Funchal terminal was inaugurated in 2010.
Right. And it was built directly onto the Pontina breakwater. It operates as a dock call, meaning vessels tie up directly to the infrastructure. Passengers can just walk directly ashore.
But how does a port actually achieve sustainability when handling that much traffic? Winning against major global ports like Montreal and Copenhagen, they must be doing more than just putting out recycling bins.
Oh, definitely. It comes down to advanced logistics. One of the primary mechanics is shore power, or cold ironing. When a massive ship docks, it usually has to keep its diesel engines running for hotel operations, air conditioning, kitchens, that sort of thing.
Right.
Advanced ports build heavy electrical infrastructure so the ship can physically plug into the local grid. This lets them kill their engines and eliminate localized emissions entirely.
Wow. But they also have to manage the sudden influx of waste, right? A ship carrying 5,000 people generates an immense amount of gray water.
Precisely. A sustainable port must have high-capacity offloading facilities that transfer waste directly into municipal treatment plants without cross-contamination.
That makes sense.
Plus, Funchal excels at passenger flow. When thousands of people step off a gangway, it can paralyze a town. But Funchal's breakwater is integrated with electric cars, tuk-tuks, free Wi-Fi, and shuttle buses that funnel passengers efficiently toward the city center.
APRAM President Paula Cabaco Mentioned these nominations reflect the dedication of the Madeiran people, and they're proving that a destination can actually scale its tourism without sacrificing its environmental integrity.
Exactly. As the industry grows, the pressure on local ports is immense. The ports that thrive will view their docks as complex, sustainable engineering solutions.
Well, we have looked at every level of the cruise ecosystem today, and the dichotomy is really breathtaking.
It really is.
You have an industry capable of engineering hybrid-fueled yachts with carbon fiber masts sailing from Japan to South Africa. You have ports utilizing advanced shore power to sustainably process millions of transient visitors.
The technological capability is practically miraculous.
Yet, simultaneously, it's an industry wrestling with foundational 20th century questions about human rights, fair wages, and international legal loopholes.
Which leaves you with a pretty provocative thought to mull over. As these ships become increasingly advanced, sporting hybrid fuels and gigabit Wi-Fi, the legal frameworks governing the people working below deck remain rooted in ancient maritime traditions.
Right.
So as technology and sustainability modernize, will the international community eventually demand that human labor standards aboard these floating cities finally catch up to the laws of the land?
That is the defining question. Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.